All right, so let's go ahead and get started here. The first thing we want to do is we want to discuss some sort of research scenario that might prompt us to want to use the cluster. Let's see. Okay, and some of you are already familiar with Nelle. Nelle is a marine biologist, and she has just returned from a 6-month survey of the North Pacific gyre, where she's been sampling some sort of organisms, and she's got 10,000 of those samples. And she's run each of those 10,000 samples through something called an assay machine, right? And the assay machine basically it returns or it gives you a file that looks something like this, right? Now the assay machine analyzes the proteins in the sample and gives you a file that looks like this. The first column or the first field in that file is an identifier of the protein. So for example, this last line here identifies protein 268. The second field or the second column in that file identifies how much of that protein is in that sample. Okay, so she's got 10,000 samples, which means how many files does she have? Right? Remember, the assay machine gives you a file for every sample. So if she's got 10,000 samples, she's got 10,000 files that all look like this. All right, and each of the samples has around 300 proteins. So how many lines are going to be there in each file? 300 lines, right? So that's what Nelle has. She's got 10,000 files that have 300 lines each, and each line tells her some information about a protein in a sample. All right. So she's written this program called stats.py. How many of you have heard of Python, the programming language? Okay, so most of you have heard of Python. We don't need to know any Python. We just need to know that she's using a program called stats.py that analyzes these files. Okay, so stats.py analyzes each one of these samples and produces some output. It produces a graph that goes in a plots directory, and it produces some other statistics that goes into a results directory. Okay, so this is what Nelle's workflow looks like. She's got 10,000 samples. She uses a Python program to analyze those samples, and that Python program produces some output from each of those files. Okay, each of these files takes about a minute for the Python script to analyze. All right, so if she's got 10,000 files, if she wrote a loop to loop through each of those files, how long would that loop take to run? A very long time. So she wants to know how she can use the Palmetto cluster or some sort of dedicated HPC resource to make this task a little bit faster. Okay, and that's what we're going to do here. We're going to look at Nelle's specific research scenario and figure out how we can use the cluster to actually make her workflow a bit faster. So the first thing we have to do is we have to get her data onto the cluster, right? And in the morning we did this, you'll remember using wget, but let's start over again. This time we're going to do things a little bit differently. We're going to download the data into our own machines first, and then we're going to see how to transfer data from our machines to the cluster. Okay, because this is probably a workflow that's closer to what you do. You probably have some data on your machine already that you want to analyze using the cluster. So we need to figure out how to get data from our machines onto the cluster. Okay, so how many of us are logged in to the cluster? Okay, how many of us are not logged into the cluster? All right, if you're not logged in, you need help getting started, please talk to your neighbor. All right, so we want to get the data from our machines to the cluster, but to do that we have to get the data onto our machines. So the data, there's a link to the data, and I'll put it up on the Etherpad. Let's see here. All right, so the data is available at this link, and I'll put it up on the Etherpad on line 56 or 57. All right, so on line 57, go ahead and click on that link, and that should prompt you, I guess, to this web page. Let's see here. If you click on the raw on that web page, it should, I guess, automatically download or at least prompt you to download a zip file. And go ahead and extract that zip file somewhere on your computer. Okay, and if you need help doing this, please let me know or put up a yellow sticky. I'm just going to wait 2 minutes for you guys to go ahead and download this data on line 57 and extract it to a directory on your own machines.
I'm sorry for it.
No, that's fine. So can you go back to the Etherpad? So this is all of today morning's materials. We're looking at line 4.
Each one.
Yeah.
Okay. So the file is in the introduction.
It's actually on the Etherpad on line 57. Scroll down. Scroll down.
Oh,
There it is. Yeah.
And you also posted it. Okay.
You guys doing okay? All right. Let's see here. All right. That's better. Okay, so let's figure out where we're all at right now. So for many of you, you might now see somewhere on your in your desktop, you might see a data HPC folder or a zip file, right? Does everyone see a directory or a folder called data HPC? If you see a zip file, all you have to do is right-click on it and unzip it. But eventually, you'll see this data HPC. Okay, so we're split between Mac and Windows users, and I guess this is the only step that's going to be a bit different for Mac and Windows users, or Mac and Unix users. If you're using Mac, raise your hand. Okay, so that's a few of you. Let's talk about how Windows users can get this data onto their Palmetto directories. So let me first log into the Palmetto. So as a Mac user, that's what I do to log into the Palmetto. And here it is, I'm logged in. I should see as a prompt my username at user001. And where am I put in the Palmetto file system when I log in? In my home directory. And all of you should be seeing this. All right. So for Windows users, you want to use the SSH client to let's see, to transfer files or folders from your local machine to the Palmetto. And to do that, you have to click on this little button. It's very blurry here, but there's a button that looks like two folders, one gray and one yellow. If you click on that, you should be prompted with this window that splits your screen in two. On the left, you'll see the files and folders on your own machine, and on the right, you'll see the files and folders on your Palmetto on the Palmetto for your account. And all you do is drag and drop stuff between these two to transfer files between them. So go ahead and try that out, Windows users. For Mac users, the process is a little bit different. You have to open a terminal on your local machines, not your Palmetto account, but on your local machines, a terminal. And you have to cd into the directory where you downloaded the zip file and extracted it to. And for me, that's my downloads directory. Once you've done that, you have to use a special program called SCP, just like you used SSH or secure shell to log into the cluster, you have to use SCP, which is secure copy, to copy stuff from your account or from your local machine to the cluster. And here we'll use SCP. We'll point to the data or data HPC. And then we'll put it on the Palmetto like this. This will probably not work, but let's go ahead and try it out. When you do this, it says data HPC is not a regular file. So can someone tell me what I should change my command to?
-R.
Exactly. So remember that when you're copying stuff locally, we used the CP command and we had to specify the recursive switch to copy directories. Files will go through no problem. But when you're copying a directory, you have to specify the R command switch. So let's go ahead and say scpr data HPC, and we'll put it in our home directories here. Okay, and that's going to give you a whole bunch of output. But essentially, it just copies everything over to the Palmetto, and I'll leave the command hanging here. Okay, that's the hardest part of today's workshop. So let's just give everyone 5 minutes to make sure that this part is done.